Your voice is soft and soothing. Haven't felt this way in a long, long time. Oh, my love, my dearest love. Oh, my body's aching. Oh, my soul is wide open. And my heart is breaking. I've been traveling over country.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Tell You What, the podcast, where we talk with musicians, songwriters about the craft of songwriting, music making, all of it. My name is Mike. Our guests on this episode are Cara Luft and JD Edwards, who make up the Canadian duo Small Glories. I had a total blast getting to know Cara and JD. We were lucky enough to have them stay here with us at Tell You What HQ for a couple of nights. We had some late night discussions, long coffee walks, fun meals. They put on an amazing show here at the studio, and then eventually we sat down to record this episode. They had a lot of great insights into their process. I won't take up too much of your time here, but let me say this. I cannot recommend enough that as soon as you are able, make an effort to see the Small Glories play live. The show they did here was literally the last live in-person show I attended before everything went haywire, and I could not have picked a better one to tide me over. They had this building shaking, their energy, passion, musicianship, the amazing harmonies you won't hear elsewhere, hilariously entertaining between song stories. They completely won over a packed house. Cara and JD have a true generosity to their performance. It's hard to put into words, but we were all feeling it that night. In the quarantine meantime, you can watch one of the live broadcasts they are doing via the internet, etc. They did one the other night via Facebook Live. It was really great, and these shows offer a fun way to support sideline musicians. Let me also say that the passion Cara and JD display in their live performances also applies to their creative process. When we talk about the backstories in our discussion to a few of their songs, you get a real sense of their commitment to the song creation process. In fact, as JD tells us of the fictional characters in the song Long, Long Moon, you can hear the emotion in his voice as he discusses their story. It's really something. When Cara and JD were here, they had just been nominated for several Juno Awards, which are Canada's version of the Grammys. A couple of weeks ago, the Small Glories did indeed win several of these coveted awards, including Vocal Group of the Year and Contemporary Album of the Year for their wonderful album, Assiniboine and the Red. It's a great record. I have the vinyl here. It has been on repeat. The song you hear playing before and after this intro, Oh My Love, is a personal favorite. You all should check this album out. Okay, enough from me. Here's our Tell You What discussion with Cara and JD from the Small Glories.
And my heart is breaking. Oh, my love, my dearest love. Oh, my body's aching. Oh, my soul is wide open. And my heart is breaking. Darling, can you hear me?
Okay, Cara, JD, Small Glories, welcome to Tell You What, the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for taking the time today. Let's set the stage very quickly. We're here to Tell You What Epiplex, high above the teeming metropolis of Evanston. Last night you were here and did a show for some people that was, I struggled to find the words for it, but it was remarkable. People were blown away. It was great. We had a little party, but now it's the next day.
we had a little party.
Now it's the next day. It's a little quieter, and we're going to have a discussion, right?
Great.
A discussion. It sounds like we're in trouble or something. We need to have a discussion.
There were some things that happened last night we haven't discussed yet.
Oh,
Oh, no.
oh no.
Yeah, you had a rowdy bunch of people here last night.
There were some people we need to talk to, but no one is in trouble. We're just going to have a lovely chat.
Awesome.
So thanks for taking the time. Let's go back in time a little bit. Let's talk about your musical backgrounds, early influences, what brought you to music. Cara, I understand your parents were folk singers.
Yes.
And you grew up in a musical home. Can you talk about
did.
that a little bit?
Yeah. My parents, they performed professionally as a duo, but my mom actually performed professionally as a duo with her sister, with my aunt, when they were teenagers and even younger than, I think they started when they were like 10 or 11.
Well,
My grandfather toured as a guitarist in a jazz big band, and my great-grandfather toured as a vaudeville tenor singer. So on that side of the family, there's this whole line of people who have been doing music for a very long time, both professionally and unprofessionally. And my dad, he really got hooked into the folk revival, hootenanny era stuff, and really into social justice. So Pete Seeger and the Weavers and
so
groups
50s,
like that.
60s.
50s, 60s,
yes.
yeah. And he decided he wanted to learn clawhammer banjo. So he studied with a fella in New York State in the mid-60s and just kind of became known as a folky guy in Calgary.
Okay.
And then when my parents got together, they toured regionally because they both had normal day jobs as well with the school board. But perfect job. You had your evenings off and your weekends and your summers. But one of the things that I really appreciated about that upbringing was hearing live music in our house on a regular basis. Either my parents rehearsing together or with other groups that they were playing with, but also concerts that they would host in the house. And you and I chatted a little bit earlier about my parents started doing house concerts in the early 70s and just cramming people into our basement, which was a fire
said like
hazard.
100
It was
people.
crazy because it was this big, huge space. But as a kid, to kind of have that exposure at such a young age, that was normal for me, and realized as I got older that wasn't normal for most people of my age. So being exposed to live music, meeting traveling musicians, getting carted off to the folk clubs, to the festivals, and also going to church. We went to church and sang in church all the time. So just kind of music was a real big part. We didn't have a television, so for fun, you would listen to records. For Christmas, we got our favorite vinyl. Or my dad would go on a trip for whatever reason. He'd come back with a record for us. That was kind of like...
Not having a TV is kind of remarkable for a person
that
of
was
our
in
generation.
our generation. And just being introduced to playing instruments, so whether we were really good at them or not was kind of irrelevant. It was more like, here, you need to play an instrument.
Right.
So auto harp and dulcimer when we're really young, because those are a little easier to play. And then I played a little bit of violin, but really wanted to be a guitar player. So I started playing guitar really young
And performing
with the family, like doing family band stuff. I started performing solo when I was about 14, and at various folk clubs I'd do the either open mic or to get invited to do an opening set, do 3 or 4 songs.
Right.
And just kind of learning about songwriting. I was writing songs quite young too as a
so
teenager.
14, 15, you were writing songs.
Yeah, I was writing songs already. I already had a little cassette that a lot of the artistic directors at various folk clubs had and encouraged me, which was kind of cool, right? But music was just a part of my life.
So you grew up in a family where music was encouraged. At what point did you see music as your vocation as opposed to something you did?
That's a good question. I just assumed when I was growing up that I would always play music, but I assumed I would do what my parents did.
Right.
Because they had jobs. So I thought, I'll go get an education degree and follow in their footsteps, have a steady income, and be able to play music on the side. So there I was in university, I think my 3rd year of education, and going, oh my gosh, this is not at all what I want to be doing. And I couldn't see myself in a classroom as a teacher, so I quit university when I was about 22, and the harsh reality of what that's like, not having a degree to fall back on, doing lots of odd jobs, but also on the other side, getting all these incredible opportunities as a musician that I stumbled upon or were offered to me, that I was like, okay, I really need to pursue this.
Okay.
And so from about age 22, 23 on, I started doing music full time.
Any of those songs from when you were 14 or 15 that you wrote part of the canon now?
Yeah, not now necessarily, although there are fans that saw me. Yeah, because I did record a few of them in my first EPs when I was in my early 20s. And so I have a couple fans who have those albums. Yeah. And they were like, are you ever going to play those songs again? I'm like, oh my God, I was really young when I wrote that. But it's kind of neat to look back on your catalog of songs and how you've changed as a writer. And, you know, I was like, wow, a couple of those songs are actually pretty good. Well, I must have been channeling something, because I was pretty, you know, wise for a youngster, but I was still young. Yeah. And you write from that, you know, kind of navel-gazy perspective a little bit. But yeah, I feel very fortunate to have had that exposure at such a young age. And, well, you and I were talking today, just even on our walk, about music and art for the sake of music and art, whether it ends up being something that you do as a profession. It just has to be part of your, you know, being, I guess. And I feel that that's been the struggle for me now, that it is the profession, that there's so much involved with running this business that has nothing to do with creativity. And that's something that actually JD's been really encouraging me at, is like, you know what, you need to just play music. You need to write. You need to just do this. Make space for it. And other artists are saying the same thing. It's like, get off the computer and don't get so caught up in the business, because that's a really easy trap for me to fall into, is like, okay, I have to make sure that everything's running smoothly for us. We have these opportunities. We got to da-da-da-da-da. But what about going back to the source and going back to what really it's all about?
Yeah.
So,
well, JD, how about you? Your early years.
Well, much like Cara, my house was filled with music too. Although, and much like Cara, my parents had real jobs too. My dad was also a teacher. Okay. And mom was a teacher until she had kids, and then she was pretty much a full-time mom until I got to an age where I didn't need 24-hour surveillance.
Yep.
But
so you were like 19.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when was that?
I just she just signed off the other day. No, but we went to church too growing up, and that's where I was introduced to music, and where I was introduced to the power of music and how music can make you feel. I still have memories of sitting in the congregation and hearing all of the people singing with all of their various voices, and there's always that old lady who sort of holds the note a little bit longer at the end. But I mean, and those were wonderful things, and I still remember like shivers of hearing that music and knowing how it made me feel. So, and of course at church there was various guests who would come. My mother, she played the piano and the organ, and she sort of led the choir. My father would get up and lead the congregation in congregational hymnals and singing and stuff. So there was that, and then we would I'm the youngest of three. We would go up and sing together at church as a family unit. And I remember I was just a kid, and I had the really high voice, and I remember I had to like look up at the ceiling to hit the high notes, and I remember kind of liking it and kind of hating it too. And all that, but music was definitely a big part. My parents introduced me to a lot of mostly gospel music and choral music, and I have fond memories of my father being in his office marking math tests and working on school curriculum and whatever in the next room, and it would be quiet, but he would always have the classical radio on just enough to hear it, and I just have fond memories. Of course I always tell about how my dad watched lots of PBS, a lot of English television, so I can remember hearing Masterpiece Theater going on downstairs and loving that, and they introduced me to the Canadian Brass, which were a famous 5-piece brass group in Canada, and they were incredible musicians. They would do one set full of classical music, and then the second set would be all of the popular music of the day, and how amazing they were. And I became a big fan of Gene Watts, and later I learned how to play trombone, was inspired by that, and played all through, like probably from grade 6 or 7, grade 8, and then all through high school, and then I went to university. Trombone. Okay. And kind of like your kids to your youngest, how I was forced to play piano and hated it. Yes. And my parents at that point, being the third kid, they're like, just do whatever you want. and then stopped. But now I kind of regret. I wish they kind of cracked their whip a little bit more on the piano. But music. I went to university and started doing music full time. I played in the symphony, in the orchestra. I was in a community jazz band. I was in a quartet and quintet. I did a lot of solo trombone work. I joined a big rock band
As the trombone
as
player.
a trombone player. And there was a singer. I remember there was a singer in the band, and he was horrible. And so I say, hey, like, can I have a shot at it? And then everyone's like, okay, you're the singer now, JD. And I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine." And it was a lot of fun through university in those days, and then eventually moved to Toronto. And continued music. And at that point, I learned how to play guitar, very much like Cara, in sort of my early teen years, and was writing songs. I started writing my first songs that I were writing. I was going to church. I was in a youth group, and so I had this one youth leader who encouraged us to do music and encouraged us to write. So a lot of the music that I started writing in the early days was very not gospel, but it had that Christian themes and stuff like that. And then
were you writing with the trombone at this point at all, or always with the guitar?
No, I was writing songs with the guitar, and but when I went to school for university, I played. You know that movie Whiplash? It's about a drummer who goes to school. A lot of that movie is kind of crazy and not really like school, but some of it was in the sense that I would play music all day. I would go to sleep with my trombone next to my bed. Wake up, I'd play horn all day and go to school and do this and that and play until I had to go to bed and then do it again and again and again. And I did that a lot. And it was a lot of fun. I would often put on some cool music and try to play along with it and stuff like that. I wasn't writing a whole bunch on the trombone, but reading a lot, learning a lot of jazz, classical music, and everything else.
Right. But writing with the guitar.
But writing with the guitar. And then when I was in this big old band in university,
Started.
It was like a big 10-piece band.
Yeah.
We were writing horn lines and,
Okay.
and doing stuff like that in the horn section. So,
But you were writing folk songs on the guitar concurrently with all of this?
Yes, I was writing songs for that band. I was writing songs for I was still a solo artist, so
Right.
I would do that. And then when I moved to Toronto, that university band kind of died. I started another band. I was doing solo stuff and working odd jobs. And I was a cook for many years. And I went to school again in Toronto to do music management. Ended up working in an internet radio station, which was kind of really cool at the time. And expanding my musical interests that way. And so by that time, I was into pretty much every kind of music, really. I even worked for a heavy metal guy and got into that a little bit.
Right.
Went and saw Slayer when I was young. That was insane. But like those days were great. I was influenced by so much. Everything from Slayer to Maceo Parker, to Bruce Coburn. I was a huge Coburn fan, and everything. It goes on and on. I didn't really push anything away. I didn't really get into that screamo metal. That shit's crazy. But
maybe in the future.
I wasn't so angry.
What is it? You weren't angry enough.
I wasn't angry enough.
No.
I was never really into Nirvana. I remember when it was huge, right? And I was like, Anyway, I get it now.
For that.
But music's always been in the forefront of
Let's jump ahead a little bit. So you to summarize a long period of time, you both went out and were doing your thing musically with different groups, individually, solo careers. Eventually, you found your way to each other, right? I had the impression that you got together maybe for a one-off type project and then realized that there was something there that maybe you should try this again, and it turned into Small Glories. So I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but what do you think it was about that collaboration that made you think that there was something there? Can you kind of try and put that into words?
I feel like we discovered that when we started singing together, there was something special and unique there that perhaps we had never come across before in our past. We both have had groups that we sung with other people, and there was always harmonies. But when we sang together, there seemed to be something that really fit really well and connected really differently than perhaps some of these other projects.
I I think,
maybe.
yeah, no, totally. I think so what had happened with this project, or with this one-off thing, we were partnered together. So we didn't even...
We were forced.
We were forced.
You didn't choose to
No,
work
we didn't
together.
choose to. And it wasn't that, oh my God, I have to work with... It wasn't that. It was just the way that the evening was set up was that they purposely paired people off who wouldn't normally sing together,
Okay.
which was kind of cool in itself. It's like,
That's very
oh,
cool.
awesome. You know, JD and I kind of knew each other really casually, not really super well. And when we were doing these rehearsals, I remember thinking that exact thing, I would never have thought that this vocal connection would happen so instantaneous. And I remember we were working on a song and JD was just naturally going somewhere and I naturally followed him, and then I naturally went somewhere and he followed. Like it,
Yes.
we didn't really even have to talk about it so much. Like we've worked really, really, really hard at this, up to this point, we've worked really hard at getting in sync with each other. But I think the natural following the other person, JD is an incredible melody singer and an incredible harmony singer, as am I. So
Right.
it was, doesn't normally happen in groups that you have people who are both instinctually kind of able to follow the other person and swap parts.
Yes.
And I also think part of that is our church upbringing, like singing in choirs, singing in the family. We just knew that instinctually. And also our vocal range. JD has quite a high voice, more in the tenor range. And I technically have more of an alto range, though I'm starting to go a little bit higher. So in terms of that, like, there's a special, I feel like with the male-female voice, when they're so close together, there's a tension that is quite phenomenal and powerful that you can get, that you don't always get if you're singing all female, for instance, or if you're singing a male voice that's quite a bit lower and a female voice that's quite a bit higher. We just seem to have that where our voices end up.
It's a sweet spot.
That's exactly it. It's a sweet spot. And I remember just kind of being a little overwhelmed and pleasantly surprised by how natural it was right off the hop.
Let's talk about collaboration in your songwriting. There's probably different ways to answer this because the songs probably come together differently, but what is generally the process about how you write together? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Generally, there is no specific way.
Right.
I don't know if that sentence makes sense, but I think we look at each song individually. We have a saying is that you have to serve the song. So there is the song, these are the lyrics, this is the melody. Now we're going to mash it through the Small Glories filter. And when we do that, we try to line it up the way it makes sense for us. So in our past, we have brought songs from our individual paths.
Okay.
We've brought covers that we really appreciate, and we write new arrangements for them. And the songs that we have written, we try to get a melody going, and then we try to get the harmony on top of that, and really make it. We also like to not really necessarily back each other up in the sense that someone is taking the lead and we kind of sing together. If you listen to the way we sing our harmony, it's not really, I find that it's not really a traditional way of doing it. Sometimes Cara will be in the melody and I'll be harmonizing,
Right.
and then we'll switch. And then sometimes we'll both sing harmony, and then the melody is sort of implied, or it's up to you, the listener, to put it in there. That's a trick I think we learned years ago. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's really one way we do it. I think we are consciously or constantly telling ourselves, how are we going to serve the song? I think it sounds better if you take the harmony, or I think it sounds better if you take the melody, or
And then finding the keys. And
the keys. Yeah.
And then when we're writing, as JD said, we've either brought songs that we've written in the past, or there's a song that we're working on and we need help finishing it off. Like the Oh My Love song is a great example of a song that I could not finish. And JD and our friend we finished it off together and turned it into a song that I could never have imagined on my own having it be the song that it came today. Sometimes I've written a song with somebody, and then JD, to bring it to the Small Glories, as he was saying, you know, we put it through the filter, we put the Small Glories stamp, so JD's influence ends up being on that song. And same with a song that JD maybe wrote with somebody else. I'll jump in. I might not necessarily change. I might not write the lyrics with them, but it ends up becoming a small Glories song. And then there's songs that we've written together.
So it's at some point you sit down in a room together and start from scratch from the beginning.
We've done that. We've done that a few times.
Yeah.
And one more thing that I'd like to say is that sometimes when you're recording, there's these things called happy accidents that you're not expecting, and they just happen because someone directs you to do it, or by fluke something happened. So there was this one song that Cara had written and brought to the group, and we had learned it all up, and originally I was singing this harmony, and within the recording process there was Cara had to be she was recording her guitar, I think, with some of the other musicians, and they're throwing down this.
We were laying
track,
the bed track.
The bed track,
yeah.
And our producer was like, JD, like jump into the room and sing the melody.
Just so that
and
we
so
would know where
I
we
was
were
like,
in a
okay,
song.
cool, whatever, and I'll just sing whatever, because I was thinking
track.
yeah, like I was just thinking they just need to know
where we are,
where the verses start and where the chorus starts and where it ends and yada yada, and then I sang it. And then I was just not thinking anything of it, and then we came out, and our producer was like, JD, you have to sing this song. And I'm like, no, this is, I can't do this. This is Cara's song. Like, she's, this is her song. Like, she's lived and breathed the song, like, no. And then Cara's like, yeah, you gotta do it. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that again. Like, because it was very improvised.
Yes.
And lo and behold, then
we kept it.
We kept it. And
that's great.
Which was
we've
actually
never really sung it since. But
no, yeah. But it's kind of an interesting way that when you're working in a group to learn how to be less precious about something that you've brought. So
yes.
That's my song. That's not what it's about for us anymore. It's about, this is a great song that really fits what JD and I are doing.
Right.
And we want to be, JD will often say, our two voices, we have to kind of become one in a sense. Like, we are a unit. And so if it works better for JD to sing the melody on that song or to kind of take it, then great. Vice versa, if this really works better for whatever. But really, we're supporting the song. Yes. We're serving the song.
Yes.
And in that situation was a great example of, okay, we're going to go this direction.
And there's a certain amount of trust involved in that
Absolutely.
relationship, right? Knowing that when this person says this should happen, that it's coming from that place of truth, right?
Yeah. And I think we're at this point, we've worked together long enough that we really do trust the other person as a person and as a musician and as a writer.
Right.
And then we also bring in people who we trust in the recording process. So we've been working with this wonderful producer, Neil Osborne, who is kind of, he's not a typical producer in some respects, but he's also an incredible producer in that he is a writer himself. So he's the one who drilled into us, you got to serve the song. And so when he suggests something, we're like, okay, we really should try this out because we do actually trust him.
Right.
And often leads us down a little path.
Yeah, there's that great example. We had another song, and it was fun and banjo and hand clapping, and we would play it really fast. And when we were in our pre-pro, Neil was like, "If you guys actually listen to the lyrics of this song, it's really quite sad. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to play guitar, so no banjo. I want you to slow it down and then put it in a minor key." And they were like, I don't think that's the right thing to do, but we'll try it. And so we tried it. And Cara and I often reminisce about this moment. And as we were driving home to our comms that night, we were like, I think he's right.
Yeah.
He's right. And then I don't know if we did it ever in a show where we did it both. We did both versions or not. I can't remember. Maybe it was just rehearsals. But yeah, he was absolutely right. And we've let that go. Like we're not hung up on it has to be that.
It has to be that. But that's the trick, is you got to bring that person in who is able to have that
unbiased.
Yeah,
Is that
kind of.
the word?
They care because they care about the song. They
Yes.
care about us, but they're not emotionally attached to it, and so they can step outside and be like, they can see it for the whole thing of what it is. And I feel like that's also what we're able to give to each other. If JD brings a song, I might be able to have a little bit more of a different perspective on the song than he would, and vice versa, right?
Right.
Be able to say, actually, I think putting this line here, or whether it's us or a producer suggesting it,
An
and
outside editor.
yeah, and it's not just some random person that we're like, hey, what do you think we should do with this song? It's
That would be weird.
that, because
I'm
some people
available
do
for that
have
job.
some people have opinions, and they're going to tell you that, and that's fine. But we care about the song, and that's really what it comes down to is what. And it doesn't mean, and actually that song that JD and I were just talking about, I have used that example in certain songwriting classes and also editing classes to say, hey, the song was written this way. I will play them the original, and then I will play them the edited version. And because they're so different.
Something that you've written.
Yeah, or
Yes.
just as an example of like,
Yes.
this is something that I've had experience with, of being like, oh, this hurts my head. And it was a bit of an emotional journey to go down to kind of come to this other. And I really do think he was right in directing us. But I also think there's value in the original version too. And people, it's been interesting to share that experience, to be like, hey, you don't need to be tied to one thing. But it really does say a lot about who you have in your corner in terms of helping you direct that project.
I've heard songwriting teachers talk about being able to let go, like let this whole verse go. You have to be willing to do that. And,
It's really hard.
and it's a hard lesson to learn, right?
Neil also had another way of helping us edit by trying to say what you're saying, but do it in less words.
Yes.
Because you can find yourself just repeating yourself, or at least the idea or the theme or whatever, the image, you find yourself repeating yourself from verse to verse. It's like you just said the same thing 3 times.
Right.
Take the first verse, get rid of everything, and then take that first verse. If it's 4 lines, make it 2, and see if and try to work it that way. And he's brilliant at that.
Well, he's a rock writer, and so I think not downfall, that's not the right word, the trap that folkies get caught in is that we like to put a lot of words in our songs.
We like to tell the whole story.
And that's where I feel like his background, because he cares about the song, and exactly what JD was saying is because he's used to writing pop rock songs that are shorter, everything is concise and
Put
just
the image there.
yes. And so for him to kind of encourage us to maybe not step out completely away from our folky tendencies, but to maybe just put it through a different filter a little bit, and to revisit it, I guess.
Yeah, and remind us that this song is not for us, but for the audience. So you have to have a lot of respect for your audience in the sense that they're gonna get it. You know what I mean?
Or they will get it in their own way.
Yeah, they'll get it
Might
in their
be
own
different
way.
than
Very-
what you're
exactly.
writing.
But that's kind of what you want.
Yes.
Like you want everyone to have their own experience with this song. You don't want to. I don't necessarily want to funnel everyone down into this one idea. Although sometimes you do that. But again, you got to serve the song.
Yep.
Each song is its own little diamond, and you want it to shine just the right way. But everyone's going to see it.
A different way.
Let's talk about some songs.
Okay.
Your album of last year, Assiniboine,
You got it.
and The Red. We worked
Yes!
on my pronunciation earlier.
You win a prize, Mike.
Thank you very much. Let's talk about a couple of these songs. Alberta. This is a love song to a place, right?
That's one way of seeing it.
If I'm hearing the song correctly, I might be wrong on this. This is my version of the song. This person is so taken with this place, he's willing to leave someone behind. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you talk about this one a little bit?
Well, when we were writing this song, it was out on the East Coast. We did this whole writing session in Cape Breton, and we were given a theme of writing songs about where we're from, or sense of home or place. And what's happened in Alberta is so many people from other parts of the country, particularly the East Coast, have moved to Alberta for work, and they have these kind of disjointed lives where sometimes the families will follow them out there, or whoever's working will go to the oil fields for 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row, and then they'll fly home to Cape Breton, be with the family for 3 weeks, and then they go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And so we were thinking about people who decide to stay when they stay in Alberta, and what happens when the family decides that they don't want to come.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a heartbreak song, but talking about the power of a place that you just, once you get there, you don't want to leave. It grabs you. And I feel like some people have had that experience before where they've moved somewhere. I often talk about when I moved to Winnipeg, I didn't know what to expect, because Winnipeg doesn't necessarily have this like great, people make fun of Winnipeg in Canada, but it's got a real great history of culture and art. I just didn't realize how much it would take me and make me want to stay. So when I got to Winnipeg, I was shocked that I was like, wow, I actually want to stay here, even though BC, I had just moved from British Columbia. It's the most beautiful province in Canada. I was from Alberta, yada. Like all these other places that everybody wants to move to. Nobody wants to move to Winnipeg.
Right.
So it's a similar thing, it's not just about Alberta. It's about anywhere that you go that you're kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to stay here. And then something grabs you.
Right.
And you're willing to leave those other relationships. You're willing to leave your family. You're willing to leave your history, your past, and create something new, because whatever it is has taken you, and you need to stay. And a lot of people talk about the geography of Alberta. Like it's quite stunning there. It's a little bit of everything, right? You got flatlands, you got prairies and foothills and Rockies and
Rocks and trees.
So it's a love song of sorts, and a broken-hearted love song, and
What I like about it, what's funny to me about it is that it's so sad that the two characters in the story decide to stay where they are. Because on the other side too, if it's a guy and a girl, the guy stays in Alberta, but the girl stays on wherever she is, if it's on the East Coast or if it's in Ireland or whatever. Which is also just as
beautiful.
Just as beautiful. Like, I
place.
can't leave here. This is how beautiful this is.
The sky
but what's
is
funny
blue.
to me is that what we've done at the end of the song, we go into this Yahoo part, and it's like, and it's kind of funny because there's this odd thing where it's really sad. I'm going to leave you, and we're going to start our own lives. But then at the same time, we're going to start our own lives. This is going to be great.
Right.
Embracing it, right? Embracing it. Yeah.
I sat down and I wrote to you. I said you should be coming. You're never gonna see a sky so blue. Drapes of green in the northern sky. Wave like flags as the stars dance by. Never thought I'd say it. She stole my heart, and it's easy to explain. Alberta is her name.
Well, as long as we're talking about sad things, let's talk about Long, Long Moon, right? Tale of star-crossed lovers, maybe?
I feel that it's not necessarily. Perhaps it is star-crossed, but what it is that these two souls, these two people have been together for a long time.
Okay.
And that they both respect. For instance, they both understand the job that is taking place here. He is a fisherman, and he goes out on the sea every day. Mm-hmm. And they both get it. They both know that they're sort of living in this fragile existence where he has to go out and he's at the mercy of the sea. Yet it also provides them with their life, their food, and their way of life. He makes money doing that. And that, and she respects that. She goes down and greets him at the end of the day. And that's the love, like they are incredibly connected. Even after death, he dies out there.
Right.
But she cannot let him go. She goes down all the time, and she sees him in everything that she sees. And it's the sea that she sees. I know but the moon reminds her of him, and he from on the other side of life, from the death, he is also still connected through that love, through the memory, and it still sees her, and they're singing to each other. It kind of breaks me up when I think about it. Yeah. But it's not necessarily just star-crossed lovers. It's a little bit more than that. They were star-crossed years ago, but they've lived their life for so long, and she can't let him go, and he can't let her go from beyond the grave, and that's why it's so. It's a little dark, but it's a little bright. I think it's an incredibly beautiful love song, and I love how it's just this banjo and voice. It's so it's just stark. It's stark. It's so fragile and frail because life can be that way.
That's the next thing. I have that written down. I want to talk about the arrangement of this song, because sometimes the simple arrangement can be the most meaningful, right? That's kind of what you're saying here.
I think so. I think in the presentation and the performance of it, it is so powerful because there's just so much space.
Right.
And when you stand down on the edge of the ocean or on a wharf and you look out to the sea, it's nothing but space. There's nothing there. Just this gigantic sky and this seeming endless ocean, of waves and whatever. And I always picture myself in her looking out and knowing that he's out there somewhere, stuck and never coming back, and how hard that would be.
Yeah.
So there's,
this is a great example too of serving the song, right? Like bringing Neil in. Yeah. And he's like, no, we're really not gonna touch this. Like the way you guys do this live, we added a third voice.
Right.
Because we had written it with another woman, and we kind of think of the other voice as the sea or the moon. Or,
I thought about that.
There was something, and then we have a bit of arco bass just to give the
it's tension. It's
emotion.
Okay.
But if you put too much bass in, you lose that tension, right? Because then suddenly it becomes an integral part of the song. We don't want it, or it is an integral part of the song, but we don't want it to be a permanent part of the song. And I remember during the mix process, the mix engineer put more bass in, in more parts. And Neil listened to it. He's like, no, you gotta take it out. Only put it in these specific spots. And again, he was right, because it created that anguish or that tension or that.
There's a lot of ebb and flow in this song, and there's these really dramatic parts. And what I love about Gilles is you hear that, like that, just that bass, the bowed bass, and it really is just like, you take that deep breath, and it's one of, I think it's one of my favorite songs, and I love the harmony that we do. I love how it creates these two characters, these two souls. I really love that song. I feel that it's to me personally, I feel that it's a kind of a timeless song. It could happen now. It could have happened 100 years from now. It could have happened 500 years ago. In that same, because that story is a timeless story. And it's a very real story. For anyone who lives on any coast. We wrote it on the east coast of Canada, but you go on any coast of any country and you're going to have similar stories.
Right.
About the land and the sea and the people who live on it.
It's one of my favorites too.
Ancient stories are all coming true. In the arms of the moon.
Let's talk about the song Sing. Here at Tell You What Studios, we believe in the power of music. It's one of our guiding principles. And from listening to the song, it seems like you all believe in that too. It seems to be a call to arms, maybe in the tradition of Pete Seeger, who you said your parents were.
Yeah, totally. It's totally a call to arms.
Yeah, so can you talk about this one?
Yeah, JD and I started writing this one with our friend Catherine McClellan when we were out on the East Coast, and it was the fall of 2017. So Trump had been Trump got in, and and the world was kind of looking very desolate a little bit, and there was a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of I don't know, us versus them a little bit.
Right.
And we felt we needed to write a song as a response. And I had been I don't know, for whatever reason, JD and I had been talking a lot about the power of singing and looking at Pete Seeger in particular, and how he was able to kind of create this sense of community and togetherness with people who were on other sides of whatever issue. You know, you could have African Americans singing with white American. You could have people of different backgrounds and histories singing together, and somehow that those barriers are broken down. And so I remember saying, you guys, we really should write a song about the power of singing. And so there we were writing, going through, and JD was like, well, let's write for these people. And, you know, we're coming up with, it was essentially a list song. That's what we came up with. And we sent it to Neil, our producer. And he said, I hate to break it to you guys, but this isn't a song. And I was like, what do you mean it's not a song? And we had this long conversation with him about what we were trying to say, but we hadn't really actually said it.
Right.
We only kind of scratched the surface. And he was so moved by the potential of the song that he said, he went away with it. And he I think it was a couple of days later, he's like, okay, I woke up one night and I finished writing the song. And he said, I kept the melody. I used a lot of your words. I knew exactly what you were trying to say. I think this is, and he presented it to us. He says, I think this is actually what you guys are trying to say. And I remember we read it and we're like, oh, yeah. He nailed it. He essentially nailed it. And he said, this is a song that Pete Seeger would sing. Sure enough, my dad, big Pete Seeger fan, he comes to all of our shows, and he comes up to me and says, I love all your songs, Cara, but the one that you and JD do that I would actually cover is Sing.
There you go.
And I was like, okay, we did it.
I remember him saying that it's not a song. And going, really? Okay. And then reading it and going, okay, this is way better. Like just reading the lyrics. And then I remember trying, like, how the hell are we going to sing this? Like, because the phrasing is completely different. And this and there was all these issues that I was thinking about. But damn it, he was right.
He was right.
He was absolutely right.
He was right.
And we couldn't have stumbled across a better song. I think I think we really looked at, and the song is really touched a lot of people. We find that it goes over very well down here in the States. People are really moved by it. People in Canada are moved by it too, but I feel like there's something about it that our American audience is really connecting the two dots to with this song. And again, in the presentation, it's very simple. There's nothing but really harmony and the words and the message behind it, which again could not be more powerful. I don't think. I think we could flood it with all kinds of parts and instruments, and it would just, there would be something that was lost in it.
Sing for the suffering working slaves, cast in a debt they can never repay. Sing for their oppressors who still believe, see the us or them, never harmony. Sing for the rebels who forgot their cause, dignity for all, whatever the cost, who are looking at retirement, don't wanna be poor. But what about the children ravaged by war? I could sing for the money, I could sing for the praise, spitting out nothing, wasting time up on the stage. If folks are bleeding freedom, deny their truth, one thing I can do is sing for you.
Let's talk about live performance. We have to touch on this because I happened to see you perform last night, and it was remarkable. You seem to take great pride in your live performances, and I see kind of a holistic approach. It is not just about the songs. It is about a bigger picture you're trying to present with what you say in between the songs and your audience engagement. So can you talk about what you are trying to do with a live performance, what you think is important?
First of all, I think we feel very lucky to do what we do. So when we get on stage, we just feel incredibly lucky, and we just want to share these stories and these songs with people, and like it's a great gig. Like Cara and I both have individually have had many different jobs over the years, whether it's planting seeds for trees, or if it was sitting in front of a computer, or doing stupid historical. This gig, there's something about that's just very incredible, and we've been working towards this for a long time. So we just feel very honored and lucky to do it. So we also know that people pay to come and see us, so we want to put on the best show that we possibly can. We also know that people have different lives, and there's so much craziness out there, and people just, when they come to shows, I feel like when I go to a show, I just want to be taken away, to be escorted to somewhere else, or just to be able to leave my reality at home and just to jump into something else, and maybe be reminded of some things that are a reality and something we should think about, but all, just to like get away from everything for a while. And I think that is part of how we do it.
Yes.
Well, we've been talking a lot about offering respite to people, a break from the stress of people feel stressed for many reasons, and people are going through life changes, the job loss, moving, deaths in the family. There's anxiety on a political level, on a societal level. Like, there's all this stuff.
Raising kids.
There's a lot going on in people's lives, personally and communally. And so part of our job is to be, it's okay, let's all take a deep breath together. I love that we're not on our phones. We're all engaged with each other. It's this kind of, it transcends a little bit. It's
right.
It takes us to this, I don't know if you're a spiritual person or not, it just takes you to a different level, and we're all in this together. I feel like there's an energy flow between JD and I, and then there's an energy flow between us and the audience. It's not really about us and them. It's about everybody together.
Yeah. Let's talk about the energy flow between you. This was one of the remarkable things that I noticed. You do tell stories in between songs, anecdotes, they're engaging, but it is not as though you're taking turns telling stories. It is more like watching like a professional level improv act. The timing and the interplay you have when you're talking is remarkable. I'm sure this is partly honed by the hundreds of shows you've done together, but it seems like you connected on that level too, not just musically, but your ability to tell stories as a team, right? Don't you think that's
absolutely? We tell a whole bunch of stories from our individual lives, but we also like to tell stories that we've both experienced, stuff that's happened to the Small Glories on the road. Like we tell our Australia ballerina trophy story.
Yes,
that happened to both of us. We're both at fault for that. Not at fault, but you know what I mean. Yeah, so like again, we try to as
a shared sensibility of some sort there in the way you present
that's kind of
the
like
stories.
what we want to do with the Small Glories is to be there together.
Yeah,
it's not because it's weird it's weird if JD's telling a story and I'm just listening.
Right,
I have to be engaged, and same with. We're engaged. We have to support the other person in what's going on. We're not a passive participant. We really do have to be engaged with each other. And that's something that we're natural storytellers individually. And that's something that we've really honed together and figuring out, okay, when we introduce this song, what makes sense and how does that flow? What's the best flow for this? Is if you take the lead and maybe I jump in a little bit, And like JD said, we wanted to try to focus on things that happen to both of us, or that we can both engage in sharing with the audience.
Well, it's remarkable, and it flows very naturally too. It does not seem like it is a studied presentation you're making, so it really, really works. I can't recommend enough to anyone out there to try and catch one of your shows, because the entire production, the entire show is just so engaging, entertaining.
Thank you. Because it's not just the music. What do you say, Jade? It's the show. What
do I say?
You say, it's the stuff that happens in between the songs.
Oh, yeah. There was this guy, we were playing in Saskatoon, in Saskatchewan, and at this great gig at Village Guitar and Amps, and we had halftime, and he came back and was like, I love the show. I had to wait until you were singing to use the toilet.
And we're like,
and it was like,
really?
wait, what? Oh,
Because you liked the story.
Yeah,
He didn't want to miss
didn't want to miss anything.
You know, I mean,
really
you could probably hear the music from the toilet, but
It's not something you ever hear at another show.
No, but so it goes to
Yeah.
show that for us, it's really the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's like the moment we start to the talking, to the visiting with the audience. We often, it's so funny. Often at the end of a show at a theater, for instance, we will go down and shake hands with people as they're leaving the show. Or we'll give them
I
hugs.
feel like we're at a wedding.
We're
or
at a
something.
wedding
It's
or
just
at
the
church or
reception
something, you know,
line.
reception line.
Funeral.
Go and be with God.
But
or
there's
whatever.
something about having that connection with people, because we've just kind of had this whole evening together, and it's not just the music, it's not just the stories, it's really the whole night. And so can we send them off with, you know, our gratitude? And
Well, I'll tell you, it works very well. But I want to talk about one more song, Johnson's Slide. So I want to, maybe if you can talk about this song in terms of how you see yourselves occupying a place in the living folk music tradition, right? So you draw on these traditional songs, but you're also writing new music, and how you see yourselves fitting into this living tradition. And I think this song maybe is an example of how you're doing that with some of your original writing.
Yeah, well, this song, this story didn't happen to us. It happened to people that we know. We didn't know the people who passed away in this landslide, but we knew some people who were there, or who had been there soon after, or
got out.
or
People
before,
who
who
got
got out. But this is also a story. It's a specific story, but this is the story that has happened time and time again. There's a few stories of landslides in Canada, as there probably are down here in the States, in the mountain states. We just felt that this was a story that needs to be remembered. It needs to be told. You know, Canada's, of course, many different landscapes, and there's many different stories of how people have come and gone. But this is an important story of that people should know and people should remember.
Carrying on that kind of like what you're saying, that folk tradition of telling. When you think about bards and folk singers, they are bringing the stories from other places. And JD, we often talk
The
about
troubadour.
the troubadour, you know,
Bringing stories from the town over.
the town over, and like, this is what happened. So I see that as a real old folk tradition.
Right.
And this is kind of, a lot of these songs in this record are very kind of modern takes of story, or like the storytelling, but that carrying that tradition forward. And actually we're finding quite a few of the songs, you know, we're telling people about Canada, and especially down here in the States, we're giving people a sense of place and community. And so even though Johnson's Slide happened in this remote, tiny community in this one region of British Columbia that most Americans have never been to,
Or Canadians.
or Canadians for that matter, but everybody can relate to it. They've either had a family member in a region that has been affected by some tragedy, or we've often had people come up and say, your music makes us think of our home because you're telling stories about where you're from. And I think that's maybe the beauty of the folk singer over the years, over the traditions, is that, you know, there is this sense of community, whether it is your community or stories from another community. It's just bringing people together, or having them think of their people and their homes.
There's a lot of similarities in people. Just because you live in a big city or you live out in the country, there's some similarities there. I think people struggle with the differences. There's all sorts of issues, you can go into that, but people hearing stories of like Johnson's Slide, they can relate to it, or at least respect it, or can understand how brutal that could have been. How at one moment it was just incredibly gorgeous and beautiful, and then the next moment it had all gone to shit.
Yep.
That no matter where you came from, no matter where you've been, the valley of the lost souls will take you in. Maybe it was thunder or an old wolf cry. Maybe I was stubborn, maybe it was pride. But it's darker than the dead soul in a devil's eye, lying in the belly of
place to leave it after what the story you just told. But this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. I can't recommend enough to our audience out there that they get out and see you perform live, because that was such a remarkable show. And
thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
I know you're going from here. You're going to be performing on the Mountain Stage program in West Virginia. So by the time this episode is out there, hopefully people will be able to access that recording. And I know that's a special treat for you all.
Yeah,
to
it's
be
our
able
first
to do
time.
that.
I'm excited.
Okay, special surprise treat. Cara and JD have agreed to play a little song for us here in the Tell You What studios. We're going to see if we can make this happen. Have you decided what you're going to play? Do you know what you're going to play? Well, you got to get your guitars.
We got to
can
go get
talk
our
about
stuff.
it
We'll
while
go
you get
talk
your
about
stuff.
it.
We will be back in a second with a live performance here in the Tell You What Epiplex. You can introduce the song if you like.
Yeah, are we recording? This is a song called Secondhand. 3, 4. Begging on to justice. If you see the things I see, don't need to hear about it secondhand. You'll be there if you dare to come along with me. I drove down the road this morning. The sun was at my back. I curved down to the cold clear water. I passed a rundown fishing shack. Across the bay, the autumn leaves turn the hills to flame. A small bird just fluttered by, singing out your name. Maybe we could rent a boat, sail across the sunlit bay. You wrapped up in your winter coat, just to keep the wind away. Spend the afternoon saying nothing. And when the sun goes down, light a fire and drink some wine. Slowly drive back into town, backing up to justice. If you can see the things I see, don't need to hear about it secondhand. There if you dare to come along with me. Oh, yeah. Rolling into the city at night. Every street has a name. Remind me of the places that I've been to. It all begins to look the same, but underneath the banners and the lights, my mind begins to change. I got a feeling at the center of town that keeps calling out your name. I wish that you could tag along. I sit beside me at a restaurant. I drink a whiskey to 3 in the morning, singing harmony on that karaoke song. Yeah, I'm going on and on. Come on, baby. I'm going on and on and on. Taking on to justice. If you can see the things I see, don't need to hear about secondhand. You'll be there if you dare to come along with me. Begging on to justice. If you can see the things I see, don't need to hear about it secondhand. You'll be there if you dare to come along with me.
All right, guys. Thank you, Cara and JD. That was awesome.
Thank you very much. Big Mike!
Big Mike!
That's right.